It goes without saying that video game bosses are supposed to be challenging. I mean, they're intended to test players' skill up to a point, presenting some enjoyable pushback while still retaining a sense of fun. After all, it's the sense of accomplishment that comes from beating a boss that is in many ways one of their most appealing aspects. Yet, sometimes developers go too far in their quest to challenge players, and the results basically end up ruining the entire experience. And that's where the games on this list come in, as thanks to some dodgy programming, bad balancing, or just the fact that they are so bloody cheap, the bosses on this list are pretty much broken. Yes, they can be beaten. We're not saying that they're in God mode and unbeatable, but my lord, did they cause me to pull out my hair when fighting them. And yeah, I'm bold, so imagine how painful that was when I went tearing out tufts across my body. So with this in mind, I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 video game bosses that were legitimately broken. Number 10. The Plane Tyrant, Resident Evil Code Veronica. Because Resident Evil's signature antagonist isn't terrifying enough already, Code Veronica decided to hurl a tyrant at players within the cramped confines of a cargo plane, and it sure wasn't fun. So, as you might expect when looking at this guy, you're going to want to avoid being turned into human kebabs by those spiky sausages that he's got on his hands. However, the room that you're in isn't big enough to skin a cat in. Another issue is that you're trapped in here and you need to shoot this tyrant off the plane with everything you've got in your arsenal, which might not be much if you've been caught unprepared, and if you've only been using a single save, then good luck, friend, as this roadblock might absolutely bin your hopes and dreams. Replaying nearly half the game because this frequent flyer freak decides to crash the plane party? No thanks, mate, and just for the record, I'm pretty sure your passport looks nothing like you. Number 9. Kaiser Knuckle General. It's one thing to call a boss battle cheap, but very few are actually so utterly broken that less than a handful of people have actually beaten it. Such is the case of the general boss battle from Kaiser Knuckle, who may well be the absolute worst of all fighting game final rounds. So let me just get a checklist of the awful no-nos that this man does to you. Okay, here we go. He can teleport. Gross. His regular attacks take off nearly a fifth of your health. Grim. He can shoot ghost versions out of himself that prevent air attacks. Disgusting. And best of all, or worst, he can only really be beaten by cheap scum low kicking, and he will punish you for doing this too much by flying across and pummeling you like a goddamn millstone. I hate this green beret Burke, and his cheapness irradiates off him like he's a nuclear reactor of awfulness. Number 8. Bed of Chaos Dark Souls. Now here's the thing, a lot of you looking at this title will immediately be calling me a scrub or challenge my getting of good status, but come on, be honest, be absolutely honest with yourself. The Bed of Chaos is a bad boss mechanically. Lore-wise, she's brilliant and I totally dig this treehouse aesthetic. I love nature, radical, etc. But actually fighting her is like trying to run through a maze of razors blindfolded. It's painful and it sucks not to know that I could be killed for not knowing where to go. The idea of this collapsing arena is great on paper, but in a game that teaches you that you can win any situation by evaluating your surroundings and timing your attacks, suddenly throwing all of that out the window by being the losing contestant on Hole in the Wall Floor Edition sucks Esther shards. I mean, if you've got the hidden bonfire, then at least that saves you a massive walk back, but if not, then have fun and pray that you learned where you stepped wrong last time. No wonder guides for this boss are so prevalent. I mean, imagine being the first one to have to learn all this. Number 7. Branch D's final boss, Drakengard 3. Yoko Taro sure loves trolling his players, right? I mean, his action RPG threequel is defined by its addictive hack-and-slash gameplay. At least that is until Branch D's final boss fight, which abandons said gameplay in favour of a brutally difficult rhythm game sequence, because of course it does. Running almost 10 minutes in length, the fight has no checkpoints and a single wrong move will result in you having to start again, complete with sitting through an unskippable 40-second pre-fight cutscene, of course. Again, this is another boss that tried to be different, but only succeeds in being a test of your bloody patience. And it's another one that online videos have been made about in droves as other players seek to provide assistance. And if you think this part is bad, then wait until you get to the end of this battle when you realise that you have to play some of it without visual prompts. Gag me with a spoon. Number 6. Mike Tyson Punch-Out. This isn't so much a boss fight and more of an absolute gloved middle finger punching you in the face, as honestly Mike Tyson is without a doubt one of the hardest bosses in gaming, period. I mean, they captured his likeness well, and that digitized Mike would eat you for breakfast and grin widely about it, and yes, he is meant to be the ultimate challenge, but when compared to the other boxers, he's such an extreme difficulty spike. It's like going for a walk in a summer field and then being told that you're going to have to climb Kilimanjaro tomorrow after having your knees smashed with hammers by Mike Tyson. Even skilled players have trouble with him, and it's so demoralizing to lose and be kicked back to the very start of the game. Here's hoping that you memorize that passcode to get you back in so that you can just get mulched again. Number 5. Lawrence Barrett, Deus Ex Human Revolution. As great as Deus Ex Human Revolution is, the boss fights copped a lot of, and mostly justified, negative heat from critics, as these sections were outsourced to another dev team because of time restraints during development, and they were absolute cack. But if you want to find the absolute cream of the crap, then look no further than Lawrence Barrett. Despite the game granting players the freedom to play stealthily up until this point, this fight required a physical showdown, which must have sucked for anyone who put more than a few points into stealth. As for Barrett himself, well, he's a blistered anus of a boss, acting like a bullet sponge with a gun for an arm and an annoying ability to find you wherever you are in and nail you with 1,000,000 bullets. Plus, you're fighting in an arena that looks like it would cost you $1,000 a month in London, aka smaller than a shipping box. It's an unfair and broken fight that was only fixed when the director's cut came out and added stealth and hacking options into the game. Oh wait, actually no, scrap that, as they charged people who had the base game to add these fixes in. Oh, Eidos, that is very low, very, very low. Number 4. Time Eater, Sonic Generations. Sonic Generations is, for the most part, a damn fine Sonic game, at least until you face off against the final boss, Time Eater, which basically sours the entire experience. Where to begin with this? It's such a mess! From constantly having to swap between the two Sonics to having the battle play out in multiple forms, all of which seem to have the most obtuse camera angle possible, it's as much of a slog against the beast as it is against the controls itself. Plus, the game never truly explains what the hell you actually have to do, and the color palette is so in your face that it's possible to take hits without realizing where they're coming from. It is, no word of a lie, possibly the worst boss this side of Silver the Hedgehog from Sonic 06. Yeah. Number 3. Shao Kahn, Mortal Kombat 9. Now this is the thing, Shao Kahn has been an utter bastard for years, often not just simply being a barrier for most players, but more like the Great Wall of Bloody China for how easy it was to get over him in battle, aka not very. He is hugely overpowered, hideously so in fact, and even possesses annoying abilities like not being able to be grabbed, making a cheese method literally the only way to get around his defenses. This is a game that's meant to be centered on skill and combos, but a battle with Shao Kahn breaks this entirely, leaving even skilled players unable to do little more than teleport behind him, uppercut, and repeat ad nauseum. Number 2. Ruby Weapon, Final Fantasy VII. Final Fantasy VII is unquestionably one of the greatest games of all time, but Square Enix arguably did take things too far with this, thankfully optional super boss, Ruby Weapon. The solution to defeating this boss is so bizarrely specific that there's little prospect of you finding this out on its own. In fact, people claim that they did this just so they could shift more copies of their guide. Basically, you need to start the fight with 2 of your party members already dead, which will skip through the first phase of the battle where Ruby is invulnerable. Once the second phase is triggered, indicated by Ruby burying its claws in the ground, you need to let your remaining character die, but only before tying the Phoenix summon to the final attack materia. This will trigger Phoenix insta-resurrecting your party and giving you a, well, at best still insignificant chance of actually beating the bloody thing, because it has over 800,000 HP. Now, some might argue that a super boss is exempt from typical expectations of fairness, but come on, I mean, this is straight up ridiculous. And number 1, Cthulhu, or Cthulhu, World of Warcraft. And finally, we conclude with a uniquely broken video game boss that exists within the MMORPG environment that is World of Warcraft, and it is the absurdly challenging raid boss, Cthulhu, or Cthulhu, depending on how you want to say it. Back in the early days of the hit MMO, the grotesque Lovecraftian monster presented an, well, unprecedented roadblock to even the most skilled and cohesive of raid groups, capable of wiping out all but the most attentive squads. And it turned out a while back that Cthulhu, or Cthulhu, was quite literally impossible to beat, with players needing to reach a damage per second output that would require specific planning from day one. After several months of complaints, Blizzard finally agreed to nerf the Big Boyle's power, and the very day that the patch became available, he was finally toppled. So yeah, literally impossible to get over. And there we go, those were 10 video game bosses that were legitimately broken. Let me know what you thought about it down in the comments section below. But before you go, my friends, I hope that you're alright. I hope that you're not broken. Because you know what? We deserve to treat ourselves as fairly mentally as we do physically. Alright? And if you're struggling with stuff, if you feel like you need a bit of help and patching up, then remember, friends, family, and support professionals, all of them do care about you, and they are willing to talk. And if you want to chat about this or anything else, you can come follow me at RetroJ over on Twitter. And as always, I've been Jules, you have been awesome, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye!